Sonic the Hedgehog has a huge array of characters, from unforgettable to very forgettable. Despite not appearing in a game yet, Professor Victoria, or Tori for short, is shaping up to be one of the most important characters in the franchise so far. We've seen plenty of teasers from games, animated shorts, and other media, and it's all building up to her first grand appearance in a mainline game. Before we get into it, I want to mention that I'll be at London for the Sonic Con UK on November 1st, 2025, so if you're there and you see me, come say hi. And without further ado, let's find out exactly who Professor Victoria is, and what role she might play in the next mainline game. Tori's first appearance was in the first episode of the online web series TalesTube, all the way back in March 2022. Tales talks about characters, the world, and clarifies some of the confusing lore around the Sonic franchise in this little miniseries. Tales discusses how humans and animals live on the same planet and brought up what appeared to be concept art of the humans from Sonic Unleashed. And at the back was a particular female character with striking magenta coloured hair. She was the first new human character that's been shown since Sonic Unleashed, so naturally people believed she was an unused character. But as time passed, the cogs began to turn. If she was an unused character, why even show her at all? And why wasn't she in the collectible concept art within Sonic Unleashed? For over 2 years there was radio silence about this brand new mysterious character. That is, of course, until Sonic and Shadow Generations in October 2024. In Shadow Generations, you can collect the pages of Gerald Robotnik's journal, detailing his time spent working with Gun, the creation of Shadow the Hedgehog and the Eclipse Cannon, the Ifrit from Sonic Rivals 2, and much more. If you pre-ordered the game physically, you'd get a real copy of the journal too. There is a lot to unpack here, so hold the journal in your mind, we'll come back to that in a minute. Her next appearance was in the blockbuster movie Sonic the Hedgehog 3 in December 2024. In the Tokyo scene where Sonic, Tails and Knuckles meet Shadow for the first time, there's a billboard in the background with today's star of the show. The Japanese text translates to Professor Tori, confirming both her name and occupation. Her next appearances take us back to TalesTube again, specifically episodes 10 and 11. Episode 10 had a book written by Tori titled The Mystery of History in the background, and in episode 11, she made her first full appearance in the franchise as a guest star on Tails' show. In this episode, we learn that Tori is a professor at Spagonia University. And this was nicely hinted at in the first episode. Notice how she's placed next to Professor Pickle in this artwork? Tori takes quite an interest in the Great Ancient Civilizations, and if you need a refresher, the first Great Ancient Civilization is the Ancients, who relocated to Earth after fleeing their own planet trying to escape the End. The second Great Ancient Civilization is the Gaians, who constructed the Gaia temples we see in Sonic Unleashed to help in the eternal fight with Dark Gaia. Sonic Battle introduced the fourth Great Ancient Civilizations, who created the Gizoids, before their own inventions turned on them and wiped out their entire civilization. But nothing is really known about the third Great Ancient Civilization yet. So let's come back to Gerald's journal. There are many intriguing sections to talk about with the journal. It is densely packed with Gerald's history, with many new lore reveals to talk about, but we'll only focus on the ones relevant for today's topic. The main thing to draw attention to is the page saying don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this discussion so far. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers. That would be an awesome milestone to reach, and you could get bragging rights to say you were there before the first 1,000. But on the inside of the journal cover is actually a letter addressed to Gun's current commander, Abraham Towers, and this letter was sent from the Archival and Requisitions Department of Gun. The letter explains that Towers wanted to uncover evidence from the incident from 50 years ago. The incident, of course, being the gun raid on Space Colony Ark, resulting in Maria's death. The journal was recovered from Dr. Eggman's stronghold after the latest incident with the Ark. Whether this is Sonic Adventure 2 or Shadow the Hedgehog isn't entirely known, and it doesn't really affect much anyway. The point is, Eggman had possession of it, and Gun reacquired it. But unfortunately, the former commander of Gun had parts of the journal redacted, and other parts had been damaged over time. The author of this letter then states they would have liked greater insight into Gerald and Maria's lives too, before signing off with the letter T, who we now understand to be Tori. On the first page, Gerald talks about the pride he holds for his two sons, One favoured robotics, and the other favoured archaeology. The names of Gerald's sons are redacted, so we don't actually know what his sons were called, but I've come up with some kind of goofy names to refer to them by. We have Archie for the archaeological son, and Robbie for the robotics son. Very creative names, I know. Journal entry 402 is a recreation of the same page from Sonic Battle, where Gerald states Archie was the one who uncovered the Gizoids. In entry 651, Gerald says he is aware of a rift growing between his two sons, and in entry 670 he writes that Maria's parents are having another baby girl. So with all this information laid out on the table, what can we actually infer from this? Well, this is all up to interpretation depending on how you choose to look at the evidence and how you choose to analyse it. So to help with this, I've invited a few other Sonic creators to collaborate on today's video, both very good friends of mine. And first to take the stage is Llennox.
Thanks, Matt. As it's already been discussed, Professor Victoria, also known as Professor Tori, has been a character that was teased years ago, and has just started to show up in media like the movies and even Tails Tube. Before diving too deep into what her intentions could be in the upcoming games though, I first want to look at her appearance. Even though she was first shown off alongside some other human characters from Sonic Unleashed, she doesn't really seem to have any of their Pixar-esque features. No large nose, eyes, or even any other exaggerated facial features. She just looks like a regular old human being. Now, why do I point these out? Well, if we turn our attention to the most recent Sonic game, Sonic X Shadow Generations, we can see the two different types of humans in the Sonic series on display. Dr. Eggman and Dr. Robotnik certainly followed those more exaggerated features in Sonic Generations, while Maria and Gerald Robotnik have more realistic proportions in Shadow Generations, just like Professor Tori has. Just from this detail alone, there are two possibilities that I think are plausible for how they will bring Professor Tori into the games. The first is that they'll do another tie-in game with Sonic Unleashed, just like they did for Sonic X Shadow Generations. They'd have to do it with characters who are so far removed from the events that took place during Unleashed though, so maybe some sort of Knuckles Unleashed? Maybe Professor Tori was exploring Angel Island during the events of Dark Gaia's influence, which is why it seems like she doesn't seem to believe Tails' story about what happened during the events of Sonic Unleashed. The only real basis I have for that is Professor Tori first being shown off with a bunch of Unleashed characters, and the Tails tube that she's in takes place at Spagonia University. The other possibility of how I think she'll be brought into the games is as some sort of double agent, or traitor if you will, of Gun. Just look at her design and listen to the way she talks.
Let's begin at the dawn of recorded history with the first great civilization. We know almost nothing of these ancient beings.
She speaks in a way that's informative, but also it seems like she believes she's above others. Is there any character that resembles these traits in the Sonic series? Well, one character comes to my mind, and that's Rouge the Bat. Maybe as a historian and archaeologist, she'll find something in her travels that will turn her against Gun and Sonic & Co. Or she'll be sent somewhere to do some archaeology work as an undercover agent. I understand that these points don't make too much sense when you think about it for too long, but we don't have a whole lot of information about her, and these are just some fun theories that could be somewhat plausible. Anyways, that's all I got. Thank you, Matt, for having me on, and make sure you subscribe to their channel because they certainly deserve it. Also, you should really check out their video on the history of racing games because it is really good. Like, I loved watching that video.
Thanks again, man, for sharing your thoughts. It was great to work with you on this. And whilst you're here, go check out his channel. Llennox regularly uploads on a variety of Sonic topics and has some fantastic analysis videos on the lyrical themes in the franchise. But this is a different approach I didn't consider, focusing a lot on Tori's actual design, like her physical appearance and her voice direction. Because yes, this is still evidence about Tori. It may not be some kind of in-universe evidence towards her backstory or motives, but how Tori presents herself is still an analysis of her character and personality. But before I share my thoughts, I'd like to invite Fincredible to take the mic.
Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Fincredible here. I'd like to thank you, Matt, for putting me on his channel today. So, Professor Tori, friend, foe, or neither? We can clearly see that she is based completely on the facts and is rather disillusioned with Sonic's kind of hero shtick based on the way that she treats Tails. And I feel like she's going to be more of a neutral force using specifically facts as opposed to feelings and anecdotal data, which may sometimes fly in the face of Sonic's undocumented sort of adventures and things like that, as we see in the Tales tube. I understand where she's coming from, because you have to always back up everything with sources, which to me makes sense why she is this way. The best way I could describe it is potentially a more critical and education-based version of Lanolin from the IDW comics, who has no qualms with opposing Sonic, or even going so far as to say that he's a danger to people because she's trying to do everything by the book as opposed to how Sonic does it. I doubt she'll be so much evil, but more antagonistic towards Sonic, as well as her skepticism of everything that Tails has said about the Ancients. Even though Chaos and the Chow are well-known things in the Sonic universe, everyone remembers the Data Gaia incident on Earth because it was a global incident that affected everyone. I doubt the space between Unleashed and the Tales tube was enough for Professor Tori to be born, grow up, and become a professor. It just doesn't add up. The role that I think she will play directly in the next Sonic game, if she is to appear, is similar to how Gun used to function between SA2 and Shadow the Hedgehog, because we know Gun is in a dubious spot as of post-Frontiers because of Eggman's quote-unquote putting Gun in their place in Forces.
I put them in their place during my last campaign.
We don't know the nature of them as they are now. I feel like she will take the place of Gun, kind of being the human element, the truth, and kind of being more objective as opposed to the hero or dark, kind of playing her own side. Maybe an obstacle in some cases, something that Sonic has to run from, and sometimes Sonic has to work with as well.
Thanks again, Finn, for joining me today. If you want to see another character analysis, you can check out his first video, which analyzes Shadow's character from beginning to end, and how the plot of Shadow Generations strengthens it. Again, this is an analysis based more on personality, and comparing her to Lanolin in the comics is honestly a really cool link. If one character is similar to another character, then it is fair to use that as a basis to try and see if they would react or behave the same. We've heard two different ideas about who Professor Victoria might be and what her personality could be, but what do I think? Well, first of all, the letter is obviously signed by Professor Victoria, telling us that not only is she a professor of archaeology and history, but she also works for Gun and the Archival and Requisitions Department. And this makes sense. If Tori is a professor of archaeology and history with a particular interest in ancient civilizations, then she would want to preserve a notebook that details the first known information of the Fourth Great Ancients, or learn about the Black Arms. The search for new information and evidence aboard the Ark was requested by Commander Towers and completed by Victoria. And we know from the letter that both Towers and Tori were interested in learning more about Maria and Gerald. Towers was born on the Ark and had personal connections with Maria and Gerald, so it makes sense that he was interested in learning more about them. However, Tori has no personal ties to the Robotnik family, yet Sonic Team feel that it is necessary to say Tori is interested in them, even to the degree of Tori being the one to bring it up. Now, we have known a bit about the Robotnik family for a while. Eggman and Maria are cousins, meaning Gerald had two children who both had one baby each. One had a son, Ivo, and the other had a daughter, Maria. However, as I mentioned before, Maria's parents had another daughter, and this is a brand new piece of lore. Maria has a sister. Tori is a brand new female character interested in the Robotnik family. Tori worked within the Archival and Requisitions Department of Gun, which gives her clearance to access the files from 50 years ago and take expeditions for new evidence searches. These three reveals come from the same product at the same time. Coincidence? I think not. I think Tori is Maria's sister, Eggman's cousin, and Gerald's second granddaughter. If you're not convinced, let's look at the timeline. The Ark incident takes place 50 years ago. The last definite entry is 670, when Project Shadow is completed, and when Gerald talks about his new granddaughter. We don't know how long Shadow was on the Ark, but there needs to be enough time there for him and Maria to become such close friends. So, to keep it simple, we'll just say there's about a year. And that would mean that Maria's sister would be about 51 years old right now. But in Shadow Generations, Maria says, "I miss my family. I miss my baby sister most of all." This implies that her sister was born when Maria was on Earth. And if we assume the baby was born just before Maria was sent to the Ark, this would pretty much make her about 53, 54 years old. Or it could mean that Maria never met her baby sister and she misses the opportunity to actually visit her. Either way, whether this baby was born slightly before Maria went to the Ark or born whilst she was on the Ark, it makes Tori 50 years old minimum. And you might think Tori looks too young for that age, but does she look that much older than Natalia in Sonic Unleashed, who is old enough to have 2 children who look around 12 to 14 years old? In Sonic X, Lindsay Thorndike is 43 years old in Season 3. The stylization of human characters in the franchise makes guessing ages from their appearances difficult, because when they aren't children or the elderly, there's less features to exaggerate. So this means all the middle-aged adults just look like ordinary people and all look within the same age group. The newer style we see in Shadow Generations makes this more apparent. Gerald Robotnik doesn't look quite as old as he normally does. So the reason Tori might look younger than my estimate of 51 minimum is because of how humans are designed in the series. And as I said, Abe grew up on the Ark. Of course he'd be interested to learn more. But Tori's interest in the situation doesn't make any sense if she has no connection to the Robotnik family. Think of it in a narrative way. You have one character who is interested in the Robotniks because he has a personal connection. So therefore, if there is another character with an interest, the assumption is there must be a personal connection. And lastly, we know that Gerald's sons were growing apart. However, this is mentioned in entry 651, before Tori is born and before Gerald ever had the chance to write about Ivo. So if Tori and Ivo are not born yet, why is Archie and Robbie's fallout relevant? Sonic Frontiers has a different approach to Eggman's character, where we see him as a father to Sage. This opened the door for a more nuanced look at Eggman, and what he truly values. We explore Eggman's digital family in the present, so doesn't it make sense that at some point we'll explore Eggman's biological family in the past? Yes, Gerald and the Ark incident do cover that basis, but that only tells of Gerald, not the whole family. It's specifically mentioned here that there is some kind of family problem, so doesn't it make sense, again, that we might see what this problem is? But let's go back to his sons. Archie likes archaeology and Robbie likes robotics. These are both traits of Gerald which the writers have assigned to his sons. Archie uncovered the Gizoids, and this has to be Maria and Tori's father. Archie being the one to find the Gizoids keeps the narrative connection strong by linking him to what was responsible for the Ark's destruction with Maria on board. Also, if Gerald's traits got passed down to his sons, then we can assume that their traits got passed down to their children. Archaeology passed down to Tori, and robotics passed down to Ivo. That would make Tori's father Archie and Eggman's father Robbie. In entry 651, Gerald writes, "I've gleaned there's a rift growing between my sons. My love for them shouldn't be a divisive issue." The way I interpret this is Gerald's love for his sons has caused the rift. So when Archie discovered the Gizoids, Gerald could have been very open about how proud he was and that Archie was a worthy successor to him. Gerald often gloats about his own successes, so gloating about his son's successes isn't out of the ordinary. This makes Robbie jealous of Archie and feel unseen by Gerald, thus causing the rift between the two, and that is why Gerald says his love for them is the divisive issue. Also, we only know Tori by her profession and first name. We don't know what her surname is. Could it be that Sonic Team are hiding her ties to the Robotnik bloodline? The evidence for Tori to be a Robotnik holds a strong amount of weight, but I thought I'd ask another good friend of mine about this. So in regards to this theory, Woody, does the boot fit?
The boot fits.
With this Tori Botnik theory in mind, what narrative opportunities begin to open? Sonic Team have worked on clarifying the timeline and re-establishing old lore, particularly since Sonic Frontiers released. And now we have Tori, a potential member of the Robotnik family who takes a particular interest in the great ancient civilizations. The ancients are the first of these greats, clearing in one large gap, but as I said earlier, we still know nothing about the third greats. Tori is the perfect character to delve into this piece of history, thus instigating a plot centered on the third great ancient civilization. Sonic Frontiers was a grand success and became the fastest and highest selling 3D Sonic game with 4.5 million sales in total, so Sega will want to continue this momentum and replicate its success. If Frontiers had a story about an ancient civilization, then the next Sonic game might do the same. And the seeds have been sown for a plot that acts as a character analysis for Dr. Eggman. We might learn more about Archie, and how his discovery of the Gizoids led to conflict between himself and Robbie because of Gerald's new favourite child. Robbie grew bitter and wanted the same affection from his father, and as he worked harder to achieve a successful career in robotics, he neglected his own son, influencing Ivo's desire for greatness no matter what the cost. In Tales Tube 2, Orbot says Eggman's end goal varies, but the common theme is
He wants to be at the center of attention.
And where could that desire have originated? A neglectful father, perhaps? This is further supported by Egg Memo 17 in Sonic Frontiers, where Eggman seems bitter that Maria got all the attention, even beyond death. Fincredible excellently pointed out that in the same episode of Tales Tube, Eggman says he put Gun in their place during the events of Sonic Forces. And now we're slowly being introduced to a new character who works for Gun? That cannot be a coincidence. The next game might dive deep into the Robotnik family tree and the generational obsession with greatness and grandeur. It may seem like the plot I'm outlining paints Eggman as a tragic villain who was raised to be this way, but Tori could prove the opposite. Eggman has tried obtaining the power of the ancient civilizations for himself, the Ancients, the Gaia, and the Gizoids, so at some point we'll definitely see him pursue the third great ancient civilization for his own destruction, whilst Tori pursues them for historic preservation. If she is a Robotnik, then she has faced the same family problems as Ivo, and could prove that Eggman's mindset is a choice, not a product of a troubled upbringing. Some of the best Sonic plots end with some kind of moral message. Think of Sonic and the Black Knight and how it approaches the inevitability of death, for example. This could be a return to that formula of storytelling, where the moral of this story is that you have a choice in how you let the past shape you. We can link that back to Shadow's inner conflict about the Black Arm's DNA within him, and Abe's growth in Shadow 05 and how he chooses to let his past on the Ark affect his perception of Shadow. And this would give Gun as a whole the same moral identity, with the three most prominent figures related to Gun sharing a similar character arc. As I said, we don't actually know the names of Gerald's sons, and this means it must be important. All the other redacted parts of the journal can be filled in. Maria, the Chaos Emeralds, Gun, and so on. Thinking within the universe, that means the ex-commander of Gun must have struck it for a reason. It means that Gerald's sons are important to whatever history they may have had. And for us, as an audience of the franchise, it means we should be able to fill in the blanks for the real names of Gerald's sons at some point. Blanking out their names is an intentional choice by the writing team. If it wasn't worth hiding, Sonic Team would not hide it. So let's go through a quick summary of what I think. Her profession as an archaeologist with a heavy focus on ancient civilizations will finally introduce us to the third great ancient civilization, and what contribution they made to the development of the world. This discovery could even be what allows Gun to rise in power again after Eggman wiped them out during the War of Sonic Forces, showing us that Tori is an invaluable asset to Gun. However, like the other ancient discoveries, the power is far too great. Sage informs Eggman of a new technological discovery on par with the cyberspace, and Eggman wants to use this power to restore the Empire, whilst Tori wants to document and preserve it. Llennox and Finn both mentioned that Tori could be antagonistic towards Sonic and the gang. She likely doesn't trust them after losing entire databases of vital evidence from previous civilizations. And Sonic would probably want to destroy the technology so that it cannot be used for evil, causing Tori to clash with him as she wants to keep it despite the power it possesses. As we learn more about the Third Ancients, we'll learn more about Tori's motivations. She never got to meet her sister or her granddad because of the Gizoids, a creation of the Fourth Great Ancients. And this is what led her down the path of archaeology with the special interest of ancient civilizations. This contrasts Eggman's perspective. Maria's death is a fuel for his hatred and drives his desire of being the centre of attention, whilst Tori turns it into a reason to push for truth and discovery, coming back to that moral of choosing how you let the past shape you. Narratively and thematically, Tori being a Robotnik works, and there is clear evidence of a story that could shape up if this is the case. Thank you again to Llennox and Fincredible for sharing your thoughts on this video. It was great hearing what you guys had to say and how that was different to my perspective. A link to both of their channels will be in the description, so feel free to go check them out. But what do you think about Tori? What role do you think she'll play in the next mainline game? Be sure to comment your thoughts down below, and whilst you're there, leave a like and subscribe. And with all that being said, thank you for watching this video, and have a nice day.